Thanks for tuning in to the World XP podcast. If you're enjoying the content, please drop us up, drop a like, and let us know your thoughts below in the comments. Also, please consider supporting our podcast via the link below. It really helps us out. Matt Muehling, welcome back to the show, man. It's been a while. How are you?
I'm good. Hello. Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, of course. So, for those listening, Matt's been on the show, I think, two times, I think now.
Yeah.
So his, we'll say origin story is in those. So go check those out. But you want to do a real quick intro so that people know who you are and what you do before we hop into things?
Yeah. So I'm Matt Muehling. I'm a guitarist from Austin, Texas. Uh, we'll use the fun phrase you may know me from, the Kill Tony podcast. But I do a lot of things here in Austin as a professional guitarist. And my life is very centered around um, creating, performing, and even a little bit of teaching music. Um, that's me in a nutshell.
Very nice. So yeah, go check those episodes out if you want to know more about the origin story. Matt's done a bunch of super cool things in the last year, so we wanted to get him back on. Of course, we'll get to those in more detail throughout this episode. But the question from the last guest, which is new for you, this kind of, I'll call it a segment, maybe. I don't know what it's called. What impact is AI going to have? So this person said in tech or computing jobs in 5 years, but I'm going to say generally, or maybe for music. What do you think the impact of AI? Are we heading towards maybe some elimination of some jobs, maybe like producers or something like that, who the AI can do it for them? Like, what sorts of things in the music industry do you think will be affected? And then if you have thoughts on the tech and computing, we can get to those as well. But figured we'd center it around music for this.
Yeah. Well, this will obviously be largely speculative.
Sure. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it's tough because, you know, I think for me as a performer, I'm not in any real danger of AI taking that job in any way, anytime real soon. I do feel like people still want to see people performing music live. As a recording artist, it's getting a little weird because AI is able to just like generate whole songs with prompts these days. How much people like that stuff feels like feels like it remains to be seen. Um, it seems like with a lot of it, there, we're going to get, instead of being worried about AI replacing us, we're really looking at something more like AI giving us a new niche in music, which is just like AI generated stuff. Um, and from what I've heard so far, like none of it's that great, but it is entertaining on a certain level. And so I can see people getting into it for that exactly. It's like, listen to this absurdity, it's AI generated. With AI, there are actually jobs that I wish AI could already do. I get a fair amount of work transcribing music for other people, for other artists. Yeah, it's mostly for other artists. And what that entails is basically like I listen to music that someone else has created, and then I figure out what the chords and the melodies and the rhythms are, and I create sheet music that other musicians can read, um, that will tell them how to play the music that I transcribed. And I've been doing this for a long time. I think any like jazz musician who's you know any good at all needs to be able to do this, needs to have this skill like pretty well dialed in, because it's still one of the best ways to learn about jazz music for sure. But it's a skill that ends up coming in handy because you can, you know, you can monetize this skill, and I definitely have. But the problem with transcribing for money is it's a very time costly skill. So it's very hard to like, it's very hard to get paid an amount that's worth the amount of effort and time that gets sunk into like transcribing music, especially music that's of any like difficulty level whatsoever. You know, there's pop music that doesn't take very long to figure out because the chords are relatively simple and the melodies are very straightforward and the rhythms are, you know, not too terribly intricate. But quite often people don't need that stuff transcribed because it's easier to learn on your own. So a lot of the stuff that I get called for is a little more difficult. And I don't get a whole lot of transcribing work, but it would be nice if, AI could completely relieve me of the amount of time that I am basically signing on for anytime I say yes to a transcribing job. These days I do about all I can to run away from those jobs. Uh anything I can come up with to like kind of scare the person who needs the transcription done out of hiring me. Like, well, I'm gonna have to charge you this much. And I won't be able to get to it until, Wednesday of next month. I'm just like, there are a lot of reasons why you don't want me to do this. And quite often they're in such a desperate place that they'll ask me to do the job anyway. And they'll need it soon enough that they'll ask me if there's any way I can fit it into what I have going on. It's always kind of rough, in a very weird way, because it's also work that I absolutely adore. So the problem is there's just never enough time to like do it. So it's always a matter of like cramming it in between the cracks of everything else that's going on. So if AI could just be like, boop, 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 yep, that's a G7, and I could sit there and just proofread it, I'd be very happy.
Yeah, that's that's a good answer. I didn't expect it to go kind of in that direction. I wonder, had something else. Oh, speaking of when you're talking about pop melodies being relatively more straightforward versus other songs, have you seen, this is super anecdotal, have you seen or have you heard of the channel on YouTube called Drumeo?
Yes,
So have you seen the ones where they bring drummers in and they play them a drumless recording or a drumless track and they have to like play along to it on the fly?
I haven't watched any of them, but I know that they exist and they sound fun.
Yeah, the Chad Smith. So like some of the drummers like will take one listen through and kind of write some stuff down and do it on the second go. Chad Smith has two where he just plays it on the first try and it's bonkers. For those of you listening that don't know who Chad Smith is, he's the drummer for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. But yeah, go ahead. It's
Yeah.
so crazy, especially like for me, I understand musical performance enough to like understand how much I don't know to know that he knows so much to be able to do that, and it's just amazing to me. But anyways, that was a slight anecdote. So, okay,
I
so
mean,
what
I
else do you
could
have?
I could
Go
add
ahead.
to that if you
Yeah,
want,
go ahead.
actually, because so there's a band I tour with called Sir Woman. Shout out to Sir Woman. Y'all should check out that stuff. Um, and usually we use a local drummer named James Atkins. I think we talked about James. He was on Kill Tony one time.
Hmm.
and he trounced the rapper Lil God in a drum off contest.
Yeah.
But James is fantastic, and he tours with a legendary jazz artist named Bob James, and so he can't always do Sir Woman runs because he's out with Bob. And so the very next guy on the call list for Sir Woman is this guy from Dallas named Cleon Edwards. And Cleon is also absolutely fantastic and has played for some huge names, Erica Badu and oh, why am I blanking on her name right now? Uh, the Fuji's girl. This is so bad that I'm blanking on this right now. Ah, I'm looking at her face in my mind. Anyway, I'll come back to that. I'm sure I'll remember. Anyway, Cleon's amazing, and he's played for some huge artists, and he's done a few of those things in the studio where it's like, yo, we're writing a song, you know, here it is, take a crack at it, and I would actually love. I need to go watch one of these Chad Smith playthroughs now for comparison because Cleon is absolutely freakish at these things that we're talking about. At just like playing along with a song, just absolutely nails on the first try.
Yeah, that he's never heard. Yeah.
Yeah, it's you start to realize that there are like certain musical instincts that some musicians develop that border on the supernatural. You know, it's just uncanny
Yeah.
what some of these people can do.
There was another one, Jonathan Moffat, Michael Jackson's drummer. They played him Numb by Linkin Park, and he hadn't heard that before. And
Yeah,
he, like, his version of that was also crazy. Yeah, there's a bunch of good ones that I think you and people listening would enjoy if you have any interest in music. Um,
yeah.
but that's cool that,
Lauren
like, go ahead.
Lauren Hill.
Ah,
Lauren Hill. See why it's so insane that I couldn't remember that? It's like it's Lauren Hill, dude. Yeah, Cleon tours with Lauren Hill and tours with Erica Badu. Sorry, it finally came to me, so I had to blurt it out.
no, it's all good. Okay, so you play with Sir Woman and your other band, the O2O band.
Yeah,
Talk about a little bit with that because I think last time we spoke and some of the stuff, the music that you guys try to play, we'll say outside of the box. And so how have things been going with that? I've seen some clips and stuff of follow the page, of course, on Instagram. How have things been going with that and your other sort of touring, we'll say strictly musical commitments?
yeah. Man, things are going really well in that department. Um, I guess when I talk about like touring, I mean I'm doing more touring now than ever before. Uh, and I really like the way Sir Woman tours. Um, Hang on, we're about to get interrupted. But yeah, like I was saying, touring is going touring is going well. I'm doing more of it now than ever before, and most of that is actually with Sir Woman. Kill Tony does these big one-off arena shows. They're not tours at all. Basically, it's just kind of like I've been trying to describe the process to people. It's you fly into the city, you sleep for a little bit, you spend all day at the arena, and that includes like setting up, trying to squeeze in a sound check, and then performing the show. Then some of these crazy people in the crew go to an after party on the first night. I don't know how they do that. I'm going to bed, and then because the second day is just the same thing. You sleep for a little bit, you wake up, you go to the arena all day, sleep for a little bit again, and then you fly home. So it's just, and these travel days are like, they're pretty intense. We're in Austin, we're going to LA, we're going to New York. Like the straight shot flight from here to New York was 3.5 hours, I think. So these are no picnic travel days. So it all just goes by in a blur. And Sir Woman is much different than that. We have off days built into the middle, of the run. We go to these places that I actually want to be. Like New York is cool, but that's a stressful city to exist in. And even if you do have like time off and money to like spend in the city, it's still it's quite a bit to deal with. And Sir Woman, we're going to places like Santa Fe and Denver and Newport, cities where it's like you can be outside, you can get some fresh air and a little bit of nature, and there's downtime built in to where we get to enjoy the towns we're in. The pacing is just right where I want it to be. And the crew is incredible. And when I say crew, like when I'm talking about crew with a production like Kill Tony, it's like there are people in production, stage management, there's still not a lot of crew for the band, but there's at least enough crew to like run sound. When I talk about crew with Sir Woman, it's like the band, it's just us out there on the road. But everyone in the group is just like a lovely human being and a real joy to be around and an absolute thrill to make music with. And it's a really good place for me, personally. I've done not a lot of big touring in my life, but enough touring to where it's like I've experienced, you know, some fun groups of people and some very not fun groups of people to be on the road with. And so it's just nice now to like get out there with a group of peeps that I know I'm gonna have a good time with. So I talked a lot about Sir Woman. I didn't talk much about Open 2.0. The music industry is it's so weird in that there's no model anymore for what like a music career looks like. I think in a lot of ways there never truly was, but you had like a certain amount of like paths that became standardized, where
Yeah,
it's
because
like, well,
there's only so much exposure you can get because the internet was not really what it is now.
right. And so, there were like A&R guys who would go out and find people. And so would get discovered and they'd make a record and it would start to get radio play and then they'd start touring. And that was a path that like a lot of people, ended up having as a music career. And nowadays it could look like anything, and so much of what you do is generating your own optics. And with Open 2.0, we're constantly kind of like working basically against that thing, because it's just the three of us. And so when I say like it's going well for Open 2.0, I'm basically talking about the fact that like, we're still doing it and we can play some shows and we do have people who want to come out and hear us, which in Austin, Texas is a bit of a struggle. I think the audience in Austin, for the most part, and I do say this with all due respect to the Austin audience at large, but a lot of people really want to hear their singer-songwritery, country Americana influenced like kind of rock and roll stuff, you know, blues guitar, singer songwriter stuff is still like in very high demand around here. So you come out with like um, an instrumental band that plays in odd time signatures and uses fancy chords, and you get a lot of like, whoa, a lot of like, whoa, what are you guys doing? Um, People want to treat us like we're making music for musicians. Um, and who's to say they're wrong? I write music for me, really. I am definitely trying to make the music that I like accessible to anybody. Um, but at the end of the day, like the songs I'm writing, I'm just writing stuff that I want to hear, you know?
Hmm.
Uh, and so there's always like a struggle to kind of like convince people to come check it out in Austin with a band like Open 2.0. Um, but I will say that like I feel like one of the ways in which we're successful is that like the music is compelling, and people, once they do finally like kind of brave the waters and come in the door, they so often come up to us and just say, this is amazing stuff. I've never heard anything like this. I've never heard anything like this is one of the most common compliments. Um, and then one of my favorite compliments was a girl came up and said, you guys took me on a journey of feelings. And I was like, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. So it's good stuff. Come out and hear it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And we're making really cool things happen. I tried to we learn a lot of hard lessons in this band. Like we'll try to commit to a thing and we'll find out very quickly whether or not that was actually feasible. And then we'll have to adjust and then explain to, the people that we made promises to that like, it doesn't exactly look like that now, but we're still going to give you things. And one of those goals was to put a single out every month this year with zero help. I mean, completely self-produced, just us recording it and mixing it and mastering it and putting it out into the world. Um, and we've definitely not had a release for every month of the year so far, but we are going to have, I think, 8 of them at least by the end of the year, which I feel pretty good about. I think that's what, a 75% productivity rate or something like that.
60,
Right.
66,
66.
66 and two-thirds. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for checking my math. But we've got some really cool special guests coming up on one of the new releases. I'm trying to keep that under wraps, and I don't know if I should. It's like it's a completely in-house production team, so it's like, at the end of the day, the spoilers are just a decision. But yeah, I think I'm going to keep it under wraps for now.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll have to have a fourth one if you want to do a fourth one with me.
Yeah, yeah, we should probably at some point. That would be good. Um,
Yeah.
how do you go back and forth between all the different types of music that you're playing, whether you're transcribing some like a jazz thing or you're making outside of the box stuff with Open 2.0, or you're touring with Serwin, or then you're going back to like classics and covering stuff for Kill Tony. Like you're going back and forth and kind of, even though it's all music, it's lots of different. Like I feel like it would be easy for you if you're not focused, for example, with let's say you're recording with Open 2.0 and you're not focused, too easy to fall back into some sort of chord pattern for some song that's like more poppy because it's just like second nature to you. Things like how do you keep it all straight in your head? And
Yeah.
especially when you're creating music, because it's and you're trying to create something different and new, and you've got these, I forgot what the stat was, but isn't like there's some stat that like 75% of pop songs are made by the same four chords or something like that. I don't remember exactly what the numbers are, but point being is like there's very common like threads and melodies and chords. And then so if you're trying to make something different, how do you stay out of that? And how do you switch like your brain between the different styles and types of music that you're interacting with on a, I would assume maybe weekly basis? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, good question. Um, the big thing for me with like keeping my writing fresh is I think, trying to make sure that, well, it's not even a process of making sure. A lot of it just boils down to personal taste. And the stuff I like to listen to, I really crave stuff that's off the beaten path to a certain degree. Doesn't mean I won't like listen to Ariana Grande or something. She's got a couple of hits out that I think are incredible. Uh, and I could say that for just about any pop artist. But if I'm gonna like turn on something that I want to listen to, I'd like for it to have, kind of harmonic and melodic and even rhythmic material that feels fresh, feels less overused. Whereas I think like with pop music, people want a formula. It's like, well, it's pop music, it should do X, Y, and Z. Um, and I'm like, that's cool. We're inundated with that all the time. It's in the movie soundtracks that we watch. It's even invaded like the video games that we play. It's in marketing, which you just cannot escape. And it's just everywhere. And so when I go to listen to something, I want to hear something that hasn't been played at me, 57 times in a row. And so I kind of feel the same way when I write. I'm just trying to hear something that's different. I don't necessarily consciously avoid like, you know, chord progressions that I know are used a lot. But they're kind of in my head, and sometimes if I throw an idea out and I, double check it and I feel like it's a little too too overused, I might go back in and edit. And uh, I think a lot of that just comes back to me like very much wanting to hear something fresh. Uh, Almost like if you could go to like uh, like a factory where they make literally any flavor of candy that you could imagine, just like going, well, I'm not going to eat grape or cherry because I've had that.
Hmm.
I want to try something new, or I want to try to make a new flavor of candy. Like I like things that just sound exotic and different, and and that you can't get just anywhere. Um, and I guess the reason I keep like hanging on to that point is I'm trying to articulate it in a way that doesn't sound, like elitist, or egotistical.
No,
It's this.
I don't think it came off that way.
That's good. I hope so. It's very, in a way, like very childlike for me. Like it's just like a curiosity and a wonder. It's like what would happen if we did this? I'm always trying to ride this line between that craving for like stuff that sounds exotic and different, but also is it what's the word I'm looking for? Not relatable, relevant, you know? Is it
Hmm.
relevant enough to where people can go, oh, I can get into this? This doesn't sound so far gone that like no one knows what to do with it when they hear it. And it's a very exciting tightrope to try and walk all the time. It's a
Yeah.
lot of
One of the reasons I ask, I remember when I was younger, um, so I was in band in middle school and high school. I played the trumpet, and then we had this other class where we had to create like a new country. And so for the national anthem, because I was we wrote a national anthem. I remember I ended it on a D instead of a C because all the music I had played up to that point, this was like early on, right? So it only played like very basic music, and everything was
Hmm.
always ending on C. And I was like, oh, let me just end on D because everything else ends on C. And I remember ending like, so then we brought it in, we played it in the class or whatever. And I remember ending on the D and like people didn't know if it was done. And I was like, why do people not know if it's done? And so, right, I was like maybe 12 or something like that. It was very, very basic. But that phenomenon of like, I know it's done because it says so on the music and it ends with this note, but people don't know it's done. But everyone seems to know it's done if it's a C. Like, why is that? And so there's certain things that people just become accustomed to when they're listening to music. And so for you at the like professional level and to be writing that to me is very interesting when I listen to your stuff because I have to pay attention. You kind of have to pay attention a little bit more to figure out like what's going on, and to me that's super cool. Because I didn't understand what I was doing when I was 12. I was just very confused. And so now talking to you, it feels like that version of me is like understanding now when I talk to you about it. And even when we
Yeah,
talk, not even on the podcast, when we talk about the stuff that you guys are doing, I'm like, oh, that was an interesting song, or this, like, I like this piece of this song. I feel like that part of me, that question that I had from when I was 12 is getting answered. So that's pretty cool.
yeah,
Um, in a way like that. So yeah, that's super interesting. Guys listening or people listening, go check it out. Link will be in the description as always. Super interesting stuff. Maybe you'll also be taken on a journey of feelings.
of feelings. I
Yeah.
hope.
Um, okay, so wanna well, I'll use this question to kind of segue into the Kill Tony stuff, but how has the adjustment of touring been to you? This is first the year that you've been touring the most. How's it been to be on the road all the time? Are you used to it, maybe? Like, how's the adjustment been for you kind of on a, oh, I have to travel again this weekend? Or like, obviously you love performing, but traveling can take a toll on you. So if it's something you're not used to, how's that adjustment been for you?
Uh, it's an interesting question. I think I don't think it's hit me um too hard, to be fair. I guess I had enough of a background in like in different areas in traveling for fun, but also like, thanks to like being a wrestler in high school, basically soldiering through like the hard parts, of whatever a thing may be. And so, and the other thing is in a way, touring was always like part of the hope, part of the thing that I hoped to be doing. It was more of an adjustment when it didn't look like touring was going to be a thing that I did a lot of. It was more of a like a intellectual, emotional adjustment in that department, going like, all right, well, looks like most of the work I'm going to be doing is, at weddings on Saturdays, uh, for local artists at local venues, and um, in like a local church on Sundays. Just like I'm not going anywhere. That's kind of a bummer. And so the few tours I did up until this year came around, I was just grateful to like be getting out on the road, and I was excited. Um, Even though like optimal, they weren't optimal traveling conditions. It's like there was no tour bus. There were not always hotels. Some like it was all too often in a 15 passenger van, and quite often staying at friends' houses, or special rooms provided by the venue, things of that nature. Uh, Sometimes it was cool, like Airbnbs, stuff like that. So now flying out to places with the Kill Tony, band, that those are like the hard travel days. But those are also met with like my own really nice hotel room to stay in for the 3 nights that I'm in whatever crazy city we went to. And on the other side of it, Sir Woman still travels in a van, but she's really good about finding us dope Airbnbs where like we're all together. There's rooms for everybody, but we're also comfortable, and we get downtime and time to breathe and take it all in and commiserate with each other. And it hasn't been too brutal of an adjustment. It's even in some ways not too hard on the fam because I'm never out for very long. Like I'll do maybe a week with Sir Woman, and the Kill Tony things are literally just like 2 travel days, like 2 performance days sandwiched in between 2 travel days. I think when we went to LA, there was a day off in the middle because it was 2 different venues, so they weren't back to back. And so it's like, yeah, I'll see you in a week, kids. Like I'll see you Saturday. You know what I mean? It's not too bad. Um, this is the first year like this, so who knows what the near future holds. But this year, it's been all right.
Good. So what the adjustment to playing in an arena, what is that like in terms of prep, timing of, right? You hear the comedians talk about arena timing versus club timing. Um, the kind of you walk out on stage and you kind of get to like, oh my God, there's a gazillion people in here. Um, did like HEB Arena and the ones in LA kind of prep you a little bit for Madison Square Garden? I remember I was listening to Roga's podcast the other day. He had Adam Ray on. He's like, some guy went up for the first time on stage at Madison Square Garden. Like,
Yeah.
and that what an insane, and I haven't seen that clip, but and I hope, well, I hope they weren't too mean, but the audience wasn't too mean. It sounds like they weren't the nicest, but that like what an insane just experience. So for you performing before, did they the first couple arenas prepare you a little bit for that, or like I don't know, just walk. I don't know. I don't even know what to ask because I've never done anything like that. But like, what was it like?
Oh man, I think the stuff that I've done prior to now actually prepared me for that. I mean, I haven't done a lot of arenas, but I've done some shows in big theaters, and so you kind of get to see the pacing at which like stage production moves. With shows that happen in big theaters, there's a lot of the old hurry up and wait going on where you have to be somewhere at a specific time, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get to do stuff once you're there. It really just means everyone needs to be like present and accounted for and available, you know, in case. And Madison Square Garden, they um sorry, 1 second.
You're good.
They they sandwiched us the most. And it sounds like I'm what am I trying to say? It sounds like I'm like that would be like a bad mark against the venue. I mean, it's not really. the thing with these arena shows is like the Kill Tony production is always or almost always in a small venue. It's almost always in the Comedy Mothership, and we're there every week. So we've got so much of the ins and outs just dialed all the way in. So, you know, you kind of show up and you know what to do and when to do it, and it's a very well-oiled machine. Everything happens, you know, in a timely fashion, and we get to like make sure all the details are really taken care of. So then you take this thing that is basically a small production, like, you know, I think I read that the Comedy Mothership is like a 500 cap room in the big room. That could, you know, my information might not be accurate, but it's not a very big room. It might even be smaller than 500. So you take this small production that's run by a small production team and you try to scale it up to this giant 17,000 seat arena, and like basically everyone is taking on more than they can handle. And that includes the production team at the venue. You know, they don't work with Kill Tony every week, obviously. So there's all these details that they're sewing up on the fly. And all of that squashes the amount of time the band gets to check sounds and rehearse. And, you know, because the show is going to start at this time. And that's what's going to happen. So the longer it takes to set up the room for everybody, the less time in between setup and start the band has to do what they need to do. And so it's pretty high stress for us in that way. And I think that's where most of my adjusting needs to be done, is just like kind of relaxing into that headspace. One thing we really have going for us as a band is that we are just a very strong improvising unit. You know, this is what we do. We improvise. And so that, in a lot of ways, sets us up for success in these situations where it's just like, yeah, man, we didn't get the ears dialed all the way in. So like, you know, you're gonna have to be in communication with the guy who's running monitors while we're performing. And you know, your attention span is going to have to be split between making sure you're keeping up with what's going on musically and getting what you need from the guy. And that's just what the first night almost always looks like. It's definitely what it looked like at HEB. HEB was our first arena, and it was exactly that. It was like, production's finished. Okay, well, we're out of time for setup and sound check. So, all right, you know, we're gonna go into this first show blind, and that's what it looked like at Madison Square Garden. Kia Forum, it was different. We definitely got some time to dial in sounds and get ready to go. It still wasn't, you know, what we would ideally ask for, but it was enough. Thankfully, because that, you know, we only had one night there. And then YouTube Theater, we got a decent amount of time at YouTube Theater. And so that's always part of it too. It's just like, it's a new venue. It's gonna look different from the last venue in so many ways. And you just gotta know this is what we do. We come in, we improvise, we roll with the punches, we make lemonade out of lemons, and we're gonna be all right. And there might be a few things that don't work the way we wanted them to, and that's part of the deal, because the show is basically I mean, the show is supposed to be controlled chaos. That's the way Tony wants it. That's the way John wants it. And anybody who's signed up to be a part of it, that's the way we want it too. It's like we don't know what's going to happen next. That's why people like this show. No one knows what's going to happen next, and that's what makes it fun. It's a thrill. It's just a big thrill ride.
So I was gonna ask you that next. So I think I saw a clip, I don't remember if it was the first night or the second night when Shane and Adam are redoing their Trump and Biden, and then Rogan kind of comes on stage, and I don't know at what point in the show, and they did this at Comedy Mothership when they did the Trump and Biden impressions as well. At a certain point, it seemed like there was some cue, right? The one at Comedy Mothership, Adam Ray as Joe Biden is saying, "Oh, I'm going to be 4 more years," and then the Trump does the Shane, Trump does the WWE walkout. Like, how tuned in to those sorts of things are you guys? Because it feels like the one time when I got to see it in person. Thank you for that. Uh, and when
My
I
pleasure.
watch it on when I watch it, it seems like some of these things he's going off where the audience is in terms of like, oh, we've had some bad bucket pulls, let me pull out a regular, or we've had the momentum's kind of dying, let me shift these things up. So are you aware beforehand that these things are going to happen, but you don't know when? Or like, how does that work? Because you guys, for the Comedy Mothership one, you're playing like the presidential theme song or whatever that song is called. Um, during that moment, was that something that you guys knew beforehand, or was that like how does that work for
So
things
there's
like that?
Yeah. So there's definitely some things that like we have to know are gonna happen. We have to be at least somewhat prepared,
Or do
you
you just
know.
know like the cue, like when he starts saying this, but you don't know when that'll happen, but when he starts saying 4 more years, that's when you know that that transition will happen, but you don't know when in the show. Is it like something like that?
Sometimes we do, like for Madison Square Garden, we had an itinerary, like a run of show.
Okay.
Uh and even with that, like not everything follows the run of show. Because again, Tony wants it to be, um I guess the word I'm looking for is malleable. Like, well,
Yeah.
here's our run of show, but in the moment, if I think we need to do this instead, that's what's going to happen. And so even with a show that's like relatively kind of like, like lined up, there's an amount of being dialed into the moment and on your toes and ready to like pivot that you just like you cannot sacrifice no matter what. And so at the mothership, there's definitely less of those things. We know that like there will be a bucket pull, like a regular, that we know that there will be a regular at the top, one in the middle, and one at the end. And when the Trump Biden episode happened, we knew that there was going to be that transition from Biden's introduction to Trump's introduction. We knew basically how it was going to go. And with some of those things, there's supposed to be like a video, and the video helps with the moment because, especially for the band, because we can just like grab the music that was on the video and like just pick it up from where the video left off to keep the moment going. Uh, there was a video that was supposed to play at Madison Square Garden that just didn't even happen, and because we're dialed into the moment, we were able to like basically substitute that moment with music. It's like, oh well, the video didn't do it, so it's on us now. So John counts us in, and we go, and we kind of like help make that moment be what it was supposed to be, even though like not everything worked the way it was supposed to.
Did you have to pick
Um,
that song on the fly as well when the video didn't go, or did you know the song that was going to be in the video and so you didn't have to make the choice? Like, oh, video's not playing. All right, here we go, guys. Count us in, and we're going. Was there like, did you already know the song as well? Because that seems
yeah,
like that sort of on the fly. And we talked about this, I think, the first or second episode that we did, where it's the kind of the listening and the on the fly, like picking the song, then counting us in and playing all in the space of like sometimes 15, 30 seconds, depending on what the situation is. So that's kind of insane. Like I want people listening to like really think about that. And I know for you, Matt, like this is kind of what you do. But for people that have some semblance of like music and know that you need to rehearse and you need to do all these things, that sort of just on the fly ability to me anyways is mind boggling, and it's so cool to watch it happen. So I would implore people to go pay attention to like the musical part just for a little bit because it's so
yeah.
cool. But anyways, keep going.
No, well, I'm glad, man. I'm really glad that like there are people out there like you who understand like what a feat that actually is, because I don't think everybody realizes just how nuts that is. And yeah, I do think it's important to like talk about it and basically, you know, kind of like bring people into the know about it, because it's a thing that just like not a lot of people can do. Um, and we talked about it a lot at Madison Square Garden because we had Marcus King with us, and um, you know, I've met a handful of rock stars in my life, and like, you know, your average, which is what a weird phrase to say, your average rock star, but your average rock star is really good at what they do. They're really good at their thing. But if you were to throw them on, you know, some other kind of gig where it's like, okay, now you're responsible for things that are outside your realm of your usual expertise, it's tough for them. And Marcus is not your average rock star. Marcus fit right in. You can tell that Marcus spent time working with musicians, you know, at some point in his life where it's just like, you know, the conversation he and I had was like, yeah, man, you show up to the thing and it's like, I'm sorry, I didn't know that tune this week. I'll know it next week. Where it's just like he's been in situations where he's had to learn a whole bunch of tunes and he had to learn them inside and out. Like he didn't just have to learn the guitar parts, he had to learn the vocal melodies and possibly keyboard parts and horn parts. He had to understand the drum grooves because he was probably responsible for like more than just guitarist information on those gigs. And he was the integration with him into the Kill Tony band was so seamless because he was already prepared. The kind of preparation that it takes to be in the Kill Tony band is not preparation that you can accumulate in the span of a week or even a month or maybe even a year, because it's the sum of a career's worth of learning all kinds of different music and being responsible for it and ready to like recall it at a given moment. there there are skills that you have to learn, um just in terms of like recalling what you heard, that are brought to bear on the Kill Tony show that like I've really never run into on any other gig. Um, you know, I've spent a long time playing in churches, uh, you know, as part of like my my income scheme, basically. Uh, and not all mean, like, thankfully, the church gig I have right now is one that I really like. Um, so I'll put more effort into that one because I know I'm gonna have a good time. But not all church gigs are created equal, and most of them are not fun. Most of them, uh, at least in terms of the music, you're playing. I'm responsible for a lot of stuff that like I wouldn't normally listen to and don't care for. And so being the busy and slightly snobbish musician that I am, I won't, I won't prepare for a gig that like that I don't think the music is cool for. And then what that ends up boiling down to is like in the car on the way to the gig, on the day of the gig, I'm cramming tunes that I didn't learn. Um, and after doing that enough times, you start to develop those skills, and then those skills are what you actually need to be in the Kill Tony band. I don't know how much cramming John and Mike and D Madness have had to do, but they've had to do some too because they've got these skills. Marcus King has had to do some cramming as well. He was able to. We were all able to go like, okay, you know, we have to play this tonight. What's in this? I hear like a 1 4 6 5, or I hear like a blues riff from D to G. I hear, and we can talk about what we're hearing without our instruments in hand in a way that allows us to like learn the song without practicing the song so that we can perform the song having never tried to perform the song before. Those are just, to reiterate, those are just skills that like take a very long time to acquire and then develop. And uh, and you need them on the show because everything we do is like in the moment. There, at this point, it's getting to the point where like there are songs that we called and learned mentally and then didn't even get to play because the moment changed and we had to figure out something else. You know, it's
Yeah.
like we were. Ah, I don't want to spoil it for. I'm going to spoil a tiny moment for you. Kind of, but like Holtzman came on the show
Uh-huh.
and he spent a good amount of his bit talking trash on Billy Joel because I think Billy Joel's played the Garden more than anybody else, and that's Holtzman's deal. It's like it's shock comedy. I'm gonna say some shit about people that everyone loves because you know that's my thing. And so we're in the talkback mics and the in-ear monitors going like, man, it would be so funny to play him off stage with a Billy Joel tune. And so we were like, what are we gonna do? Like, we should play, and someone was like, we should do Uptown Girl. And so like we listened to Uptown Girl, we learned like the intro to Uptown Girl. We were set to play Uptown Girl to walk Holtzman off the stage. And then it was like, oh, they switched this. Here's who's coming on next. We actually have to play this now. And then the moment that we planned for didn't even get to happen because a new moment, fell into play. And that's the way that's the way it rolls with that show. It's the ultimate improvised gig.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say that to piggyback off what you just said is kind of people don't, I think, re notice the musical part as much because you guys don't make, well, audible or like you guys don't really make mistakes. And so like you guys are good. And so people don't notice because it's just like, oh, they're just playing a song, whatever, and they don't actually understand what goes into it. Like the amount of mastery that you guys have over the craft and the timing with each other and the camaraderie, like people don't notice because you guys don't mess it up ever. And
Yeah.
then and then you also hear that when you'll have comedians go on and they'll be like, Tony will ask them, oh, what else they do, and they say they sing or whatever, and then he'll look at you guys, he'll be like, they can play anything that you want, and but he's not kidding. Like it comes off as a joke, but I know from talking to you that it's not a joke. It's like you could give them whatever kind of beat they want because most of the time what they want is a very standard, like just kind of in whatever genre they pick, it's a very standard beat for whatever that genre is. And so for you guys, it's not even that complex. Um, but I don't think people realize that that's not a joke either.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and
Reddit, I will say, to add to that, Reddit would eat me alive if I didn't jump in there and say that, like, sometimes we definitely do make mistakes, and
of
we
course,
definitely,
of yeah,
yeah, and we
it's not
definitely
like it's
don't.
perfect, but
Right.
there's like there's a level of you guys will make the mistake and then quickly rectify it in a way that's not like you're never going to hear something so out of tune or so out of place that it's like, whoa. Z- if I guess that's more of what I mean. I'm sure the Reddit warriors and stuff will say, oh, they make mistakes all the time. Yes, of course. Obviously, that comes with the nature of what it is that you guys are doing. But for the average person that doesn't know music or wouldn't pick that up like they would have, they wouldn't know. And that's more of what
Yeah.
I was getting at. It's like the people don't talk about it generally because they don't notice it. So of course,
Yeah.
if you got people, the musical people on Reddit that are like looking for, oh my God, they played this one wrong chord for 0.2 seconds. It's like, all right, man,
Yeah.
come on, relax. But
Yeah.
yeah, no,
Everybody's looking
of
to
course.
barbecue somebody. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you for saying that. And yeah, I do agree that it's just like there's a high level of, you know, very intentionally developed skills brought to bear by the band. And it's worth mentioning because it's the kind of skill set that is supposed to fly under the radar. It's not a skill set that you could notice unless you had some type of musical training. Like, and the people who do know music they're always saying what you're saying. Like, how did how did you do that? Like, how did that happen?
Were the stakes, well, obviously the stakes were raised for Madison Square Garden. Did you feel that nerve at all going in? Like the first couple songs were you guys kind of um yeah, we're gonna play this one because it's in that we've done this one a bunch of times. We want to settle into the environment and the rhythm of the show and the new setting. Um like talk to the you walk out on stage and you look up and it's like this is this is it. Now I would it's the biggest place you've ever performed in, I would assume.
Yeah.
So like walk us through the like you get there to the arena in the morning. Like what's it like walking in? Are you already hit with the like this is Madison Square Garden or does it like take some time before you actually walk out on stage and like what's the backstage like, the setup? Like walk us through kind of that whole like the morning of and your feelings like walking in and then settling into the show.
It the the feeling that you're talking about, the like, oh shit, this is the garden, that feeling comes in waves. We stayed at a hotel that was maybe a 2.5 minute walk. Like, you step out the front door of the hotel and you can see the building up the street. And it's a massive building, so just walking up to it, you're like, you know, just this is crazy, this is the fucking garden. And then you go through security, and then you go up the elevator to the fifth floor, and then you're walking down the hall, and there's this giant banner on one of the hallway walls. Kill Tony, Madison Square Garden, August 8th or August 9th and 10th, sold out both nights. And it's like, again, that's the next wave. And then you walk in to the actual arena, and that's another wave where it's just like you see the room kind of open up before you, and there's all these seats. And when we first get there, everything's in pieces. They haven't assembled everything yet. Banners are going up. I didn't realize that those giant LED screens that are on the side, that give everybody like a basically a closer view. those things are assembled panel by panel. The panels are like this big, and they just put them together and hang them up on these big cables. Um, and so there's just a wave right there watching, like walking into the room, and then again, like kind of watching all the working pieces of production, put everything together. And then that all kind of settles in for a little bit, and we get time on stage to try and dial in some sounds, and then we're off for a little bit, and then the next wave comes when it's like you're waiting, you're in the arena, but you're waiting for like start of show. It's like you're about to walk on stage, so there's a wave right there, and then there's obviously another huge wave when you walk out on the stage. And the audience just goes ballistic. That roar of people, because I've been in productions where it's like when the band takes the stage, the crowd gets excited. But it's different with Kill Tony because Tony's, Tony and Red Band have been gracious enough to like infuse our names as part of the package. It's like when you come to see Kill Tony, you're gonna get Tony Hinchcliffe and Brian Redband. You're gonna get Cam Patterson and William Montgomery and Casey Rocket, and you're gonna get John Dees and Michael Gonzalez and Matt Muehling and D Madness, and now the Groove Line Horns. And so now, when I walk out on stage, the crowd makes sound for me, and that's the biggest adjustment for me personally. It's just like, oh shit.
The great Michael Gonzalez joining the band tonight. One of the top young rising musicians in the world, Marcus King. Our guitarist, Matt Muehling. The band leader, John Dees.
17,000 motherfuckers just made noise for me. Like, that's crazy.
Did you guys go out one by one?
Yeah.
How was that?
And,
You walk out, guitarist Matt Muehling, or however they introduced you. Like, what's
yeah.
it like?
Dude, it's just, I don't know how to describe that, When that many people make sound for just you, that feels insane. It feels insane, dude. It feels like flying. I was an adrenaline junkie when I was a kid. Like, I've done like some cliff diving, I've done some skydiving. That moment where you leave the ground or you leave the plane and there's nothing underneath you and you're just like in free fall. It kind of feels like that. When that many people make noise for you, it feels like the ground disappears. It feels like I feel like Magneto. You know how Magneto will like kind of just like he'll enter the room and then he'll just ascend, right? It's like, yeah, my feet don't touch the ground. That's lyrics like that are written about those moments. Like you're flying now. It's really indescribable.
And then quickly is come back to Earth because I would guess. Is this on the live stream? The intros for everybody, I would guess.
Yeah.
So you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I would guess that you guys went out first, and then when they intro to, Red Band and Tony, then you guys are now playing something.
Yeah.
So quickly you have to come down, your feet have to touch the floor again and get
Yeah.
back into the pocket to start playing the music. What's that like in terms of, all right, this moment was super cool, and now quickly like got to get back to business with everyone else, like that sort of the transition into the introduction into the show. Because I feel like also, at least from when I did any sort of performing, it was like the intro and like the first 2 minutes, and then you kind of settle into things. So what's that
Yeah.
first like? maybe it wasn't 2 minutes, but those first couple intro songs, how is that for you guys as a group in terms of for you yourself, like the feelings of it, and then um was there one moment where you're like, all right, we're just in the pocket now, or like how did that work?
Yeah, you know, we have enough reps under our belt now, having done the show so many times at Comedy Mothership, but also like having done it in a few arenas now, where like the muscle memory really takes care of you, you know, in terms of the job. And man, actually, you know, we're both the athletes. You know, I'm surprised I haven't started talking about this sooner, because we're both athletes, but it's
Hmm.
like, you know exactly how that part works, because that's what all the, you know, the practice shots, you know, and the drills and all the repetition work that we do on the field or in the mat room has led to where now when it's time to do the thing, it's automatic. um there's almost no processing that you even have time to do, you know. It's
Yeah.
like you're kind of riding the wave for a second, and even that has like training built in at this point. It's like I know how to ride this wave now, because I've had to ride this wave. It's like adrenaline's pumping and I'm really excited, and I feel a certain, you know, I feel like I'm floating because all this cool stuff just happened. I've also got a job to do, and that job is starting right now. Okay, here we go. Um, so in the moment, man, I would say like definitely for me personally, like my focus is on, even when I'm like feeling the feeling of just like walking on stage, it's like, oh, this is crazy, this is amazing. I almost honestly need to start reminding myself to breathe it all in for a second, because there's like I was saying, there's just no processing that gets to be done. It's like focus is on now, and that's all I'm doing. Like my whole body is just kind of like a tool of my focus at this point. And given the way the shows work too, where it's just like fly in, do the shows, fly it, and like, you know, you kind of, you wake up in home, you wake up in your bed at home like 5 days later, like, yo, what the hell just happened? Because there's so little processing that you have time to do, and most of it gets done after the fact when you get a chance, you know. And so in the moment, it's just like, I wouldn't call it numb, but it's like a very different frequency, you know, for your brain, where
Hmm.
it's just, man, it's you know the feeling because you play soccer and you know what it's like to be like in a game and focused on the game. It's a very different kind of thinking. Um, you can't be shut off, right? Your awareness has to be on 2000. You know,
Yeah.
you have to be aware of so many external things that like you don't have to be aware of when you're like walking down the street or what have you, you know. um and so there's just a whole plethora of information that your brain is taking in and processing in a very quick and focused manner. uh and it's very hard to describe it. It's like being in some kind of like, yeah, how would you describe that to, you know, a lay person? It's like playing a very like intense video game, you know, like
Yeah, I
it's
guess
you
it's
get a little bit of
interesting.
that focus when you play a first person shooter. Yeah,
Yeah, I was gonna say for sports, for soccer, I'll use arena soccer, like five-a-side, like it's kind of more like hockey, so that people are closer to the field, they're like right on the glass.
mm-hmm.
Um, and so when I was playing for Fredericksburg Fire, we would have like the lights would go off and there would be kind of like the strobe lights on the field and the smoke machine, and we'd run on the field and people would be like pounding on the glass, and you got to like show some level of appreciation for the people that came to see you. And then immediately it's like, all right, tuning everything else out, and it's on the field. Let me get my first touch, my first pass right. Let me win my first 50-50 ball, and we kind of move. But at the same time, as the game goes on, you have to have some awareness of this event could help us with momentum with the crowd. So if I make a big tackle and then you kind of like make some sort of not show, but like you want to keep the crowd involved, and then so you have to know what plays will the crowd um appreciate that maybe aren't necessarily like the little ones that a coach or your teammate would appreciate because the crowd won't notice. So similar to what we talked about where like a normal person might not notice like a little mistake that you guys make, but the Reddit would, like you have to be aware of, okay, that thing maybe the crowd doesn't notice, but this big thing that the crowd will notice, and so you have to tune them out until that thing happens, and then you can kind of like make a fist pump or whatever and like get the crowd like going a bit again because you need the momentum. And
Yeah.
so it's yeah, I think it's a information processing thing basically is what
Yeah.
it is. And it only comes with, in my experience and talking with other people as well, only comes from reps, regardless of the industry, whether it's music or athletics or whatever. The first time it happens, you are deer in headlights, and you only get used to it. Some people, it takes less time to get used to it than others.
Yeah.
um but I think it only comes with reps because it's like you're not supposed to be in that situation where you've got a gazillion people watching you, or even if they're like watching it, like there's a hundred people or 1,000 people watching the live stream on the internet, and there's a couple hundred people in at the place. Like something in your brain is like, there's not supposed to be this many people paying attention to me right now, and so that's a very weird thing. And then all of a sudden, you just have to not think about it, and that's so much easier said than done to somebody that doesn't. I don't know. You have to like I don't, it's so hard to describe. It really is really hard to describe if you've not experienced it. And I've obviously not experienced it to the level of 17,000 people at a Madison Square Garden. Um, but like when they're like, "Oh yeah, first time somebody's on stage is in at Madison Square Garden," it's like that person just like I don't know how they do. Not good, I assume.
Man, I don't think they did that great. Uh, but it's hard to say. I felt like bucket pulls at Madison Square Garden were generally better than they've been at a lot of the big venue shows. Um,
Like, did the
that being,
person melt though? Did they like melt on the stage, or did they do okay?
he did like, I mean, in terms of like speaking in front of the crowd, I think he did fine. I can't remember if I thought he was funny or not. There was one guy who got up. Uh, man, I should have looked up his name. Jason. You know what? I'm gonna look up his name and I'm gonna like share his IG account with you because his name should be mentioned because he's the best. He's the best bucket pull we've had since Cam Patterson, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Um, and he got up and his minute hit really hard, and I thought it was hilarious. And then he was also one of these people who in the interview said like I can play guitar, and we were like, yeah, let him play. And he comes back to take a guitar, and Marcus King hands him his guitar. So like that was nuts. It's like, dude, you got the rock star's guitar. You know what I mean? Like you didn't get Matt Muehling's guitar. You got the big guy's guitar. So like you better do the thing. And he did. Like he was a decent player. And it was just like, in terms of bucket pulls, that guy really stole the show. And I have a hard time remembering, any of the other guys. Again, there's so much information to be processed. Like I probably just need to watch the show again and just be like, oh yeah, I forgot. The bucket pulls are the first thing that leaves. There
Oh,
are
for
so many
sure.
things. There's so many things that I was held accountable for and needed to remember and needed to do, you know. And I remember all the big pros that came out and did their thing. The bucket pulls. All I remember is one of the guys said, "This is my first time," and that being completely insane. But I can't remember if he was funny, you know. I remember that he like kept his composure pretty well. I don't, you know, and that was like the most impressive thing. It's just like, dude, you're in front of 17,000 people, like you're speaking in complete sentences. You're doing a pretty good job, you know.
Yeah.
Good job.
Well, but
Good
that's the
job.
thing, right? That's what the bar is for the first time that you're in in front of that many people. And I
Yeah.
think that's important to like if you've been in front of people before, you kind of recognize that, and that's super cool as well. Um, Man, we've been chatting for a while.
Yeah.
Let's see. So I had a couple more. I don't even know. We were just kind of going. So the first Trump and Biden episode at the mothership, that episode, you said, and I messaged you about this. You said like at towards the end, you're all bombing, and Shane turns around and says something like "shut the fuck up" or whatever, and and Tony, and so, but that episode, I think I watched that episode or parts of that episode like 3 or 4 times, and it's still funny every single time. Just the in character the whole time. I had never seen Tony laugh that hard during an episode. For you, and then like Deep Madness is making cracking jokes or like, oh, D can't see, and he's like picking his glasses up so he can see. Like the whole thing was just a complete like it was so amazing to have them run it back. Well, first, what possessed you to say that to them? Because as like you don't talk that much as some of the other ones do. Um, like I don't know, you're just sitting there and you're like, this would be funny because it was.
Uh, I'm man. I do selfishly want to get in there and say stuff a lot of the time. You know, I know I'm in the back corner. I'm not always in the shot, you know, and it's like, you know, there's definitely a part of me that just wants to be like, yo, guess what? Like I'm here. You know what I mean? I still have friends who are reaching out to me, you know, like this week, who just realized I was on the show. You know, like, bro, you're on Kill Tony. That's fucking crazy. And it's like, yeah, dude, I've been on that show for 3 years. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's whatever. Like, I mean, it's not whatever, but what am I trying to say? It's like you know, that's my cross to bear, right? Trying to
Yeah,
find the line to ride for myself personally. Because at the same time, like, I don't want to be so famous that I can't go to the grocery store, you know? So
yeah.
like, it's kind of nice that I'm like back there. Not everybody notices me. I don't talk all the time, you know. It's like, if you're paying attention, you know Matt Muehling's the guitarist for the Kill Tony show. If you're not, you may not notice that. And that's for better or for worse, right? It could go either way. Um, but yeah, there are times when like the part of me that's like wanting to be noticed is like, man, I should have said this, or like I should say this. And then other times, and this is what I felt like it was with the Trump Biden thing, it's just like, dude, like all of you guys are professional comedians. And like that's the best, you know, sometimes they'll get to riffing on material. It's like, guys, this isn't even good material. Like, why are you spending your effort on this? Right. And we were in that right then and there. They were all riffing on something. I can't even remember what they were
Was it
talking about.
it was the fucking Jurassic Park joke that completely bombed.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's crazy about it, is because that joke ended up being gold.
Yeah.
And you know, that's the magic of Shane. Like that dude, you know what I mean? Like he can make stuff really work. Uh, but at the moment, I was just like, really, guys? Like, 4 professional comedians, and the best thing you got right now is Jurassic Park, and they told some joke that didn't even work, and I was just like, cool, everybody's bombing now. Like all the professionals are like, you guys suck right now. And Tony felt it, and I think that's why he amplified it. And it was a funny moment. Like I got one in. It was just a tiny little victory for me. But Shane turning around and telling me to shut the fuck up, that was the whole moment for me. Like so seldom do the guests kind of like acknowledge us. And I think that's fair. It's just like they're comedians, we're musicians. Like the worlds are different, and like I'm always like trying to figure out a good headspace to be in, where I don't just annoy these people because it's like, dude, you're fucking famous, and I got to play guitar on a show with you. It's like, dude, shut up, nerd. Like nobody cares. And so I'm always just trying to leave him alone. But in that moment, like Shane looks back and he's like not only acknowledging me, but he's acknowledging that I had a good point and that my point was actually the funniest thing that was said in that moment. And he's like,
Yeah.
dude, shut the fuck up. And he said it the way, the way that Shane says stuff. It's just like the guy, they say the keys to comedy are timing and delivery. Like Shane has delivery for days.
Yeah.
And he saved that delivery for that specific thing for just me. It was just, I was the only one he said that to. He looks back and he goes, yo, shut the fuck up.
It was
Just
so
me.
good.
It was
Oh,
a
it was so
gift,
good.
dude. It was so good.
Um, were they planning on running that back at Madison Square Garden? Because that happened pretty quick after. So like
Yeah.
like was that already the plan, or when they saw it did so well, were they like, oh, we should do this again?
As as far as I know, that was the plan. It's hard to like say exactly what Tony has in mind because he keeps so much of the plans a secret. And that's by design because the show is so heavily improvised, and he just wants to see how people genuinely react to things. Uh, so I know it was definitely the plan to have him there. He he goes he puts a lot of effort into making the arena shows be good enough to be in an arena. There are things that happen in the mothership that just they don't translate to a big room, and so he puts a lot of effort into making really big moments for the arena shows. Um, this whole Trump Biden thing, I think I think the only thing that was even remotely like a question was like, can Adam Ray pull off Joe Biden? And that's not even that big of a question because it's Adam Ray. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? He's just the guy that can like do whatever he decides he's going to do. We
The
all
Dr.
knew
Phil
Shane.
as well.
Yeah, we all knew Shane has a killing Trump impersonation because it's in his specials and it's amazing. Um, and I personally had never seen Adam do Biden before the episode where he did it, and I think it was just a thing where like the debate went so bad,
Hmm.
and Shane lives in Austin now, and I imagine Tony just like asked Adam like, you know, you're so good at impressions. Can you do a Joe Biden? And Adam was probably just like, yeah, hell yeah. And so he set that whole thing up. And I am fairly confident he knew it was going to be great because of the two people that are doing the bit. So, when planning an arena show, it's just like, well, we have to make that happen again. Uh, but he might have decided that after seeing how the episode went. I'm not even sure. I don't know when or how those plans are made, but it was pretty evident to us real quick that like this was probably the goated Kill Tony episode. It's almost to like 20 million views on
That's
YouTube.
insane. That's insane. Oh, it's
Yeah.
so good. It's
Yeah.
so good. And just I feel like every like Tony's killing it. You're touring more than ever before. Like a lot of the people kind of around me are like not me, but like that I pay attention to or kind of in this new it feels like we're in a new wave or transition of like
Yeah, for sure.
people and things and ideas and music and I don't know, it feels promising as like in a variety of ways, even with all the stuff going on. Um it still feels like people are finding new ways to be successful. And the other thing that I mentioned a bunch on the show is like as things transition, like education
Sorry.
is a good. You're good.
Alan texted to let me know that they're on their way. Sorry, go ahead. It feels like,
So like education is a very good example. It's like where previously people go to college and you get the piece of paper that says you know things, but now you
yeah,
can almost know as much like by YouTube or Spotify podcasts or lectures on the internet or whatever. And as people figure out how to quantify that, like it's kind of a bit of a wild west at the moment, and it's like that. It feels like for almost everything, and so people are kind of becoming successful on finding new ways to be successful and to monetize things and to have outreach in different ways and like seeing like the 'cause I think the first episode we talked, you were kind of doing local gigs and stuff, and now all of a sudden it's like you're doing your own band and you're touring, and it's just like if things keep, I don't know, it feels like the future looks bright for people that are trying to take advantage of the new opportunities that are there. Like, yes, the market is more saturated than ever before because of the there's no barrier to entry to do a lot of this stuff, but also there's more opportunities than I feel like ever before for a lot of things. And I feel like people are really taking advantage of it in a cool way. So I don't know, man. I don't know. We've been chatting for almost 2 hours at this point, so I think probably it's a good place to wrap it up. You got any or like where should the people go to find your stuff? And you got any last thoughts or nickels before we get you out of here?
yeah. I definitely want people to check out my stuff, especially for my band, Open 2.0. Um, Tony always gives me such a hard time about the band name, but it's not that hard. It's just the word open, the number two, a period, and a lowercase o. And that's on all the streaming platforms. I we kind of arbitrarily chose Spotify as the flagship, so like, please check us out on Spotify, but it's on everything. It's on Amazon Music, it's on YouTube Music, it's on uh, Apple Music. Um, and I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud of the stuff that I'm creating with my band. Not only because of how brave it is, but because it is entirely us on this team. I mixed and mastered these tracks, like everything was just done by us. It's the most DIY thing I've ever been a part of. Um, and I want people to hear it. So please go check it out. You can find us at letter O number two letter O band on Instagram, O2O band. And the Kill Tony band now has its own IG, which is a great vehicle for finding pretty much everyone and what they're involved in. So, maybe start there, the Kill Tony band on Instagram, because from there everything's clickable. Like you can click my name, and then I've got a list of all the stuff I'm involved in. You can just click. You have to make it as easy as possible for people these days, because it's so easy to be like, well, that's too much effort. I'm gonna go pay attention to this now. Um, but yeah, I'm really excited about two records that Sir Woman is about to release that I got to be a part of because I work with them now. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And if you are in Austin or planning to come to Austin, stop by the gallery on a Thursday night and see John and Mikey and me and a couple of our other friends, Dane Relaford, who tours with Gary Clark, and Charles Reed, who's just one of the most terrifying drummers I've ever heard in my entire life. We're just making stuff up for 3 hours straight, and it's really cool. It's where we hone a lot of the skills that we need for other things that we do. And yeah, thanks for keeping up with me on Kill Tony. It's really amazing just to feel all the love that the Kill Tony fans give to me personally and give to the band in general. It's a new thing for me, and it's very exciting, and it feels really good. And I've been at it in the music industry for a long time. So I will never not be grateful, because I've definitely felt what it's like to like grind in obscurity for years on end. So this is I don't know if I can even say it's been a long time coming. There's just so few guarantees in the music industry, but I will just say it's a thing that I'm very grateful for. It's a thing I didn't know for sure would happen, and it means everything.
Yeah, that's a great way to wrap it up. Links to all that stuff that you mentioned will be in the description, of course. And thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Stay healthy.